Hey guys, this is Sebastian bringing you part 3, the final part to my 3-bet theory and ranges video series for RakebackDollars.com. Alright, just to do a quick review again, in part 1 we took a look at some considerations for 3-betting, why we're 3-betting, is it for value, is it as a bluff? We took a look at some different 3-bet ranges, and then we defined some hands that we should 3-bet bluff with and what hands to 3-bet value for. In part 2, we took a look at some analysis of how 3-bet ranges change versus different opponent types and how to adjust versus them, as in the nit and the loose passive, guys who fall into pretty easy patterns to exploit. We also took a look at how to use Poker Stove to better understand ranges and why we're 3-betting. So we looked at some HUD stats and how, according to the HUD stats and how their ranges, how our bluff ranges and our value ranges were changed and how they affected it and how it was looked in the Poker Stove. We'll be doing some of that today as well. In part 3, we're going to take a look at how to adjust to regulars, the importance of notes and reads, and positional stats to consider before 3-betting. Adjusting to regulars and the importance of notes and reads, these kind of go hand in hand, but we'll take a look at that once we get into the video. Like we had mentioned before, this isn't a perfect science. Reads are better than any HUD stat that you have. No player fits into a perfect cookie cutter mold, regs especially. The loose passive and the nit, they tend to play in a very predictable manner. When nits bet and raise, they typically have it, yet they're going to be playing a very tight range and they're going to be giving up very easily. So we're going to be value betting them only when we have very strong hands. We're going to be bluffing them a lot, and when they're betting and raising towards us, we're only going to be continuing with the very strongest hands. Conversely, loose passives, they don't like to fold, so they're calling way too much even with marginal hands. So we're going to be betting for much thinner value against these opponents. We are not going to be bluffing them nearly as much because they don't like to fold, and most of our play is going to be value based for them. Again, these are pretty typical patterns for them, but for the reg, it's very, very different. Especially the regular players, they're going to be much more difficult to play against. So if you're unsure of what to do, it's much better to either fold right away or call and play a small pot in position, especially against these regular players, because they're going to be hand reading much better, and they're just not going to be making the big mistakes that the loose passives are going to make, or they're not going to be married to their overpairs sometimes, like the nits can even be, because they're playing so tight and whatnot. But okay, 3-betting versus the reg. Unfortunately, like versus any opponent, but especially versus the regular, there's no general rule for 3-betting versus them. You're going to have a much stronger read in order to 3-bet. This player is going to hand read better, play better post flops, not nearly as likely to make the big mistake, and will put you in a lot more difficult decisions. And they're going to do this all much better than both the nit and the loose passive. So they're going to know when to bet. They're just going to hand read better. They're going to know when you're weak. They know when they're going to be putting you in difficult spots. And as far as their opening ranges and when to 3-bet against them, they're going to be playing a lot more balanced range. Now, given the nit and the loose passive, all players, they're going to make some sort of adjustment, but the difference is the regular, one, they're going to be able to recognize that they need to adjust much sooner, and two, they're going to know the proper adjustment to make because they've been in the game, they know how to deal with more aggressive play or whatever type of play it may be, where the loose passive and the nit type player and the more recreational player, they're really not going to know how to deal. They may adjust, but they may not be adjusting properly, and they may be actually making adjustments that are even more detrimental to their game, where the regular typically isn't going to be doing that, and for the most part, they're going to be making better adjustments. Again, 25 NL and below, the players really, even the regular players, they're not going to be adjusting as well, but they'll be adjusting better than the recreational players. 50 NL, the regulars will start adjusting a little bit better. Then from 100 NL up, the regular players, once you start playing that with them, they're going to do a much better job of adjusting. So it's going to be a lot more difficult to play. versus the regular, again, there's no general rule, but again, I recommend playing very straightforward and only three betting for value versus this type of villain until we start to develop some sort of reads on them. So until you really know that they're folding too much or they're calling too much, whatever it may be, I'm just playing pretty straightforward against them. Three betting for value, maybe if there's a good squeeze spot here and there, but in general, it's going to be for value. It's going to be pretty ABC straightforward. Because these regulars, they're also going to be, they're unknown to you, you're going to be unknown to them for the most part. So they're going to be playing also very straightforward versus you. So they're going to be giving your three bets some credit and whatnot. So, again, I'd be playing straightforward. As a baseline, I'd be three betting my premium hands, aces, kings, ace, king, and queens versus a middle position and open and later versus an early position open with queens. I'm typically flatting, especially against regulars, because again, they're not going to be calling without premium hands from early position, and even if they do call, they're not going to be putting in a lot of money if they whiff on it too often. So again, I think flatting queens is optimal. And again, we can mix in some bluffs, especially if we think a guy's playing tight, and until we get a little read on them, again, they're going to give us, some credit, but I think we're also going to get ourselves in difficult spots, so I would just refrain from that to start. Okay, we're going to take a look at exploiting different reg tendencies. Now, this could be very, very different from when we took a look at the nit and when we took a look at the loose passive. Again, these guys are going to be playing a way more balanced range, and they're just not going to have huge holes that are going to be easily exploited by doing a certain play pre-flop. These guys, they're used to playing a lot of hands. They've seen it all, and for the most part, they're going to be, they know how to deal with that. But let's just take a look at regular one here. Playing a 16-14, 3-bet of 4, fold to 3-bet of 75%. And I included the C-bet percentages, flop, turn, river, respectively, with these villains because I think it helps to paint a better picture with them where typically against regulars, you're going to have a much better hand sample against them, whether you've played because they're playing more tables, so you're going to accumulate the hands more quickly. And also, again, if you happen to have hands before you play against them in your database, then you're going to be able to have that much of a leg up against them. So typically, this is the typical tight, aggressive, taggy type player. His VPIP and PFR are close together. He's playing a relatively strong. He's raising a solid range here. He's three betting approximately 2/3 of his range for value and mixing in about a third as bluffs. And again, this is just an estimation that I'm making, almost like a stereotype of this type of opponent until I have specific reads against them. For all I know, he could be 3-betting all his hands for value for 3-betting, but he values 10s as a 3-bet hand, or he could be only 3-betting aces or kings for value and bluffing the rest. But again, this is typically how it's going to shake out. So if we put in, for player 1 here, pre-flop, we're going to put in aces, kings, ace, king, and probably queen some of the time too for value. So he's raising this portion about 2/3 for value, and then again he probably has some bluff hands in here as well that he's probably balancing here with, to balance his range with. So maybe his bluff range, his 3-bet range looks a little something like this: queens plus, then ace-6 suited down, or whatever it might be. So again, for every 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hands, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hands. Well, these are pairs, so it's not really quite a third, but maybe it's a little bit more like something like this. But either way, we get the general idea. Again, we don't really have an exact idea, but that's about what we're looking at. A pretty straightforward, solid player who's going to be playing for value, raising a strong range, continuing with only a really strong range to 3-bets too, also by folding 75%. We know if he's folding 75% to 3-bets, he's only calling 25% of the time. So again, we took a look at some of the other videos. If he's opening 14%, and he's only calling with 25%, he's only calling 3-bets with a 3.5% range. And if we just pull up Poker Stove again, we can see the 3.5 calling range he's calling with here. It's going to look like pretty much queens plus, ace queen plus. So it's going to be like aces, kings, queens, ace king, and some ace queen. right around there. That's about what his range is going to look like. Again, maybe sometimes it won't be ace queen, but sometimes it'll be jacks. Without a specific read, we really don't know, but we know this is approximately the hands that he's going to be calling with here. Versus this villain, we're going to be 3-betting them with the top of our range, kings plus and ace king, and be bluffing more frequently than versus the two other villains here. And the reason being is, again, if we pull up Poker Stove and we look at it, so this is what he's calling 3-bets with. So if we're 3-betting him for value, he's only calling with a value range, so we only want to be calling, we want to be 3-betting him with a better range there in that spot. So again, aces, kings, and ace king against a queens plus range. We're going to do pretty well here. We're, again, almost, 57-43. That's pretty good against, especially against a regular who's not that exploitable. We have an edge. And again, because they're folding pretty tightly, because he's folding 75% of the time like we talked about, we're going to be wanting to 3-bet this particular villain a little bit lighter than the other villains here. Okay, now we're going to look at regular 2. He's playing a 24-22, 3-bet of 5, fold to 3-bet of 65%, and c-betting 60-30-70. This is typically more of our laggy type regular. Again, I use the word, laggier definitely than villain 1, the regular 1. 3-betting, 5%, 3-betting a little bit wider, and folding less to 3-bets. So we can see here, this guy's opening wider and folding less to 3-bets. So this tells me that this guy typically, as a general rule, is comfortable playing post-flop. Also doesn't mind folding, is going to be calling more 3-bets out of position. Because we can see here, if he's only folding 65% of the time here, 22% times 65%, if he's only calling 35% of the time here, if we do 22 times 0.35, we get he's calling with a 7.7 range there. And if we take a look at here, we're just going to clear here. And if we just put in about approximately, assuming he's calling with the top 7.5 of his range, and different people define ranges differently, but it's going to look something like this. He's calling with a lot of Broadway cards, a lot of suited Broadway cards, and a lot of pocket pairs, 8s plus. So we have a general idea. This is a pretty exploitable range, so we're going to be opening up our value range, but we'll get to that in a second here. So this player, he's playing a wider range than Reg 1, and he's going to make hand reading. It's going to make hand reading more difficult because he's opening a wider range. He's obviously could have more hands that he's going to be playing. So again, it's going to be more difficult to know what he has. He could show up with that 6-5 way more frequently than regular 1 will. He's going to be 3-betting a little bit wider and typically be aggressive with 3-betting from the blinds. This guy, again, without knowing anything about him, typically this guy's going to be playing a more tight, aggressive style. This guy's typically going to be playing a lot looser, not going to be afraid to be making plays post-flop. That's why he's calling so much. He's not calling. This type of villain isn't calling, opening wider and calling 3-bets wider so they can be folding away their chips post-flop. So again, they're going to be probably more difficult to play. Again, he's going to be 3-betting a little bit wider and typically be aggressive with 3-betting from the blinds. More times than not, these types of players are going to defend a lot more versus steal attempts. That's typically why their 3-bet range is going to be higher, because again, these regular players, if you feel you have a skill advantage over your opponents, a lot of time you don't want to be bloating a huge pot, especially in position, where you're going to create smaller stack to pot ratios, making it easier and less decisions for your villain to play against. When you have a skill advantage, you want to keep the pot to stack ratio as large as possible and make the villains make as many possible decisions as possible in order to make as many mistakes, not to mention you feel that you can navigate through situations and hand read better, hence you're going to do better by playing smaller to medium pots that have more tricky spots, or more tricky spots are going to be created. When you 3-bet and bloat bigger pots, again, it makes the decisions a lot more straightforward. Typically it's either, I call a bet and I'm committed, or I give up, or whatever it might be. So that 3-bet range typically is from stealing more or re-stealing from the blinds more. He's opening fairly wide, yet not folding that often to 3-bets. We showed that earlier with the Poker Stove. We took a look at that. So he's going to be defending a lot more He's going to be defending his opens a lot more. Therefore, we're going to have to open up our value range and narrow our bluff range. So against this particular villain, hands like ace, queen, queens, and sometimes even jacks, we're going to be 3-betting for value. Jacks, it's a little bit thin. We need to have a pretty good read on the opponent. But against this particular opponent, I feel very comfortable 3-betting queens plus and ace queen for value. Yet I'm really not going to be bluffing them too often because he's going to be calling wide. And the hands that I'm going to be bluffing with, his calling range is going to have a lot of those he's going to have me in some pretty bad spots knowing that this guy's the type to be calling with ace-10 suited as well as ace-jack. So if I start 3-betting suited aces, I'm going to be put in a lot of situations where I'm dominated against his range here in some 70-30 spots when I 3-bet and he calls. So I really don't want to be in those spots. This particular opponent, too, typically, we're going to be forced to make big decisions versus this villain. So that's another reason why we don't want to be 3-betting light versus them. This guy's going to be playing back at us, typically. They're going to be forcing us to tough decisions. That's why for value, this type of guy, it's good. They're calling too wide, probably not giving up as easy. So we kind of want to make hands against this type of regular a lot of the time. And also let them bluff us too. We really don't want to even play back at them. Just from his c-betting numbers, we can see that this guy's playing a 60-30-70. So that tells me that this guy's c-betting a lot of flops, giving up on the turn when he doesn't have it, or he's pot controlling hands and then firing on the river again for value, or he's betting the flop. And then if called and it goes check, check on the turn, he's going to be bluffing a lot on the river to try to take it away there as well. Where villain 1, regular 1, we didn't really talk about their c-betting tendencies as much. They're going to be, again, firing a lot of flops. But for the most part, they're only going to be continuing on the turn and river for value. With a 40% range there, they're going to have some bluffs sprinkled in, such as draws and maybe misdraws or hands that they're turning into bluffs here and there. But they're typically going to have some sort of hand like a made hand, even if it's a bottom pair, where maybe they fire the flop, fire the turn for the second barrel, and then just fire the river to get you off. Sometimes they're going to have some bluffs mixed in. But for the most part, they're going to be playing for value. Regular 1 we're talking about here, where regular 2... because again it's much harder for them to hit hands as well, they're going to be playing maybe a little bit more tricky, but again more aggressive on the river and such too. Regular 3 here, this guy's playing a 2017 3-bet of 6%, fold to 3-bet of 70%, and c-betting 60-60-60. This particular regular, in my opinion, just from the stats alone, and again stats only tell a small picture of it, but again just from the stats alone, this particular villain is playing the most balanced range of all 3 of the regs, and in general, this particular villain is going to be the most difficult to play against. Because even their barrel frequencies of 60-60-60, they're going to be betting when they have it, bet it when they don't, betting their draws, betting when they miss, betting when they hit. So they're going to be causing you to make a lot of decisions. And against this, when you play pots against this particular villain, they're going to be, again, forcing you to make a lot of difficult choices, and they're not going to give you free showdowns. You're typically going to have to invest money, but they're not typically going to invest a lot of money with bad hands except for their bluffs. But again, they're just going to be difficult to play against. And playing a 2017 range, still raising a very solid range, and when they're 3-betting 6%, again, probably re-stealing more from the buttons even than regular 2. But we can see they're raising a tighter range than regular 2, but folding more than regular 2. So again, that makes it more difficult to play against. Just like Reg 2, he's going to be 3-betting a little bit wider and more aggressively from the blinds, like we said. And he's going to be playing more optimal frequencies, in my opinion. And it's going to be hardest to exploit and hardest to play against. Because again, he's going to be calling 3-bets with a pretty strong range. He's going to be... again, he's going to be opening a pretty solid range. And he's going to be 3-betting you... This particular villain is probably also going to be picking better spots to 3-bet bluff as well, even in position, just because their 3-bet percentage is a little bit higher. So in general, again, I feel regular 3 is probably going to be the most dangerous to play against. Like we can see, like we saw from just taking a look at regulars 1, 2, and 3, there really was no perfect exploitive strategy. Again, because the players are playing pretty solid ranges and they're going to be playing aggressively. They're going to be hand reading well, like we talked about, so they're going to be putting us in difficult spots. That's why we really need to develop good notes and reads if we want to be able to exploit the regulars, especially with the 3-betting. And we're just going to take a look at an example of some HUD stats versus some notes and reads, and we can see how much more powerful the notes and reads are. So first I'm just going to take a look at the HUD stats and draw some general conclusions regarding the HUD stats, just general pictures, and then we're going to take a look at the notes and reads. So this guy's playing in 1916, so right there over that, over that VPIP and PFR tells me the guy's playing a fairly solid strategy pre-flop in general, playing a pretty solid range. 3-bet of 4%, folding of 68%. Again, seems like pretty reggish numbers. C-betting 60, 60, 40. So that tells me this is the type of guy who he's going to be firing a lot of double barrels, but probably is only going to be continuing on the river with his made hands. Probably only going to be continuing on the river with his made hands here. So this isn't the type of guy that I'm going to want to be floating on the flop because he's going to be firing a lot of second barrels. So this is the type of guy I'm either going to be wanting to call down 2 streets with, possibly float 2 streets and take it away on the river, which again I don't recommend, especially at this micro stakes for the guys that I'm talking. This is the type of guy that when we have a hand, we want to call 2 streets and then decide if we want to value bet the river, but probably not against them, but probably call them down 2 streets and then fold without top pair or better on the river and just possibly even check behind. Here, C-bet in position, he C-bets 50, 50, 50. So this tells me when he's in position, he's pot controlling more than when he's out of position. And in general, he's going to be betting hands. He's going to be betting most of his hands 3 streets for value when he, from in position, and probably varying his bet sizing. And he's also going to be, firing pretty consistently when he fires the flop and turn. A lot of time we can expect a river barrel to come. C-betting out of position here when he C-bets 70, 70, 30. I think that when he's out of position, he's going to be firing virtually 2 barrels always. So if we call this particular villain in position, we're really going to have to be willing to call 2 barrels, even sometimes with second pair and things of that nature. And again, either check back the river against him, as it looks like he's pretty much only going to be firing the river with his made hands with a 30% frequency. Okay. Now, that was very cookie cutter and very general, and that's just what I'm assuming based on his stats. I really have no idea of with what hands he's doing it. All I know is the frequencies, and I can paint a general picture of what I think he's going to do. But at the end of the day, all it is really hypothesizing and making generalizations based on, the statistics and the way that players who typically run these statistics play. So that's not really a good specific read on an opponent. But now let's take a look at some of the notes and reads that I may have on the same opponent. Okay, he pot controls, aka check, second and third pair on the flop in position. Okay, well now I know that when he checks on the flop and he's in position, a lot of the time he could have second or third pair. So that's really good information to know. So I can take advantage of that. He bets second and third pair on the flop and turn out of position and check folds the river unless he improves. So okay, so this tells me that, like we had a general idea, he's going to be firing a lot on the flop and the turn when he's out of position, and then really only going to be firing the river when he improves to a good hand. So what we know here is we can say, this is a type of guy who possibly I can double float, because chances are if he if he's going to be check folding the river, most of the time he's not going to be improving, so I can float this particular opponent 2 streets, and then if he fires a third barrel, I can fold, and if he checks to me, I'm going to bet, and a lot of the time have success taking it away. He bets the flop and turn out of position with top pair, though he check calls the river. So again, now this puts a little bit of a monkey wrench in our plan. So if we know that he's going to be betting the flop and turn out of position with top pair and then check calling the river with top pair, we're still going to be floating him quite a bit there because a lot of the time he's still not going to, he's going to less, there's a better chance that he has second and third pair than he has top pair. But now we're at least aware that he can show up there with top pair. So again, we're going to be betting our top pair for value. We're going to be betting anything better than top pair for value. And a lot of the time we're going to be bluffing in that spot as well. So now we see he fires three streets in and out of position with draws, whether he hits or not. This can be problematic as well too because again, now we don't know. Is he betting the draw? Is he betting top pair? Is he do it? So again, now we know he's playing aggressive, and it makes his hand range that much more difficult to read. As in, if he's betting if he hits or not, we're going to have to really have strong reads, and we're sometimes just going to have to go with it or fold early. He fires the third barrel small when it's for value and more than 2/3 pot when it's bluff. This is an absolutely golden read that we have right now. This makes this player almost like we can play him to a T at this point because now we know exactly how he's going to be playing. If he fires three barrels and the third barrel's big, well, most likely his hand's not very strong. Yet if he fires that third barrel small, we know it's for value. So if we have a value hand ourselves, we can call or raise depending if we think our value hand's better than his. And if he fires a big bet on the river, now we can call him down wider, even as wide as top pair, weak kicker, and maybe even second pair sometimes, especially if it's on a misdraw board. So putting all this information together, we have a pretty good game plan and map of how to play against this villain here. In general, now what I would say is against this type of guy, I'm either going to want to be folding early and immediately against him because I know he's going to be firing quite a bit of barrels, or I'm going to be wanting to call him down to the river to one, either take it away on the river, or two, in order to, calling down for value, with my hand against him. So this just shows, I think, again, how much more important notes and reads are against the villains. Okay, now we're going to take a look at how to use positional stats. Bear with me for a little bit longer, guys. I know this has been, with theory and stuff, I know sometimes it can be a little tedious. So we're going to go through this, here. But again, I think this is really important stuff here, especially the positional stats. So I think this is also an area that a lot of players who, especially when they're beginning to use the HUD, that they neglect is the positional stats and how much positional stats can influence a player, a play, and just in general, how much position influences players' play. Not even just from HUD stats, how much tighter ranges are from early position than they are from late position typically. So, okay, we're going to look at our overall stats of our regular here. 2017, 3-bet of 6%, fold of 70%. So overall, he's calling 3-bets with a 5.1% range again. 70% times 30%. So a little bit wider than premium hands here. So probably, again, ace, queen, jacks plus, and maybe sometimes other hands depending on who he's playing against. And he's folding a little bit more than 2 out of 3 times versus the 3-bets. Again, if he's folding 70%, we know he's calling with 1 out of every 3 times he's calling approximately. And he's playing a fairly balanced range overall. Okay, pretty good. So we know this. Now let's take a look at how playing against this particular player changes when we're playing from early position. So now if we take a look at his early position stats, which on all the HUDs, if you just scroll over and look at the pop-up, they usually have, or they all have positional stats if you set it up that way. And now we're looking, when he opens from early position, he's playing a 9-6 style with a 3-bet of 2% and fold to 3-bet of 50%. So this particular player, he's playing very nitty from early position. He's calling 3-bets with 3% of his range. So he's calling, when he opens from early position, he's actually calling 50% of the time. So he's only folding 1 out of 2 times as opposed to 2 out of 3 when he's opening overall. And when he calls now, not only is he calling 1 out of 2 times, when he's calling with a much, much stronger range now as well. So he's raising his value hands and then calling with his premium hands only. So against when this particular villain opens from early position, we're only going to be 3-betting him with kings plus, and we're virtually never going to be 3-betting him light here, as in his range is very strong to start with, and he's only folding 1 out of 2 times, so we're going to be putting ourselves in a lot of bad spots if we try to bluff him when he opens from early position. Now let's take a look at the same player, but look at his button stats. Now he's opening 40-35, 3-betting 10%, and folding a 3-bet of 80%. Now, given there's not too many guys who are 3-betting, especially from the button 10%. But we're just using this as an example here. So this guy is stealing from the button extremely wide, so we know that, and he's calling 3-bets with a 77% range. Now, again, he's calling with he's calling with a 20% range. So he's calling with a 7% range here in this spot. So he's calling with a wider range than he overall would be, yet he's folding a very high frequency. He's folding 4 out of 5 times, but when he calls, he still has a pretty wide range. I think this point illustrates how players pre-flop raise percentages, how much that can affect their range, their 3-bet range. How can I say that a little bit better? So basically, the wider someone opens, the wider their calling 3-bet range is going to be, even if they're folding a much higher percentage. Because we can see in this example, from early position, he's opening 6% and folding 50% to 3-bets. So he's folding 1 out of 2 times, but he's only calling with the 3% range. Yet here, he's folding 80% of the time, but that means he's still calling with a 77% range because his opening range is much wider to start with. So just because a guy has a higher fold to 3-bet percentage doesn't mean that his range is stronger, and vice versa. Here, we're not only going to widen our 3-betting bluff range, but we're also going to be widening our value range as well. So this is a spot where we're both widening our value range and our bluff range. And the reason's simple. When he opens from the button, he's folding 4 out of 5 times. So we're going to be showing immediate profit just by 3-betting him here. And also, because we know when he does call, he's going to be calling with a 7% range, we know now we can also open up our value range to 3-bet against him because he's going to be calling so wide. So we can even 3-bet as wide as jacks plus and ace queen versus this villain because he's going to be calling very wide. So if we were to take just this player's overall stats and draw conclusions from them, we'd get very, very different results than when he's opening from early position, when he's opening from the button. So that's why we have to be very careful, again, with the HUD stats of just generalizing about them, and we really need to delve as deep as we can to get the most information possible to make the best possible decision without specific reads. But again, reads are premium, especially against regulars. So that's going to do it for this video. Again, I know that this video was a little bit dry and a little bit tougher to follow, but again, I think there's a lot of really good stuff, and this is the stuff you're going to have to understand if you want to exploit the better players in the game. Also, I'm happy to announce that we're going to be having some promotions coming up as well, too. I'm going to be heading out to the World Series in about a week or so, so we're not going to really be launching them till afterwards. But the first is going to be new members to RakebackDollars who sign up and make a real money deposit. I'm going to be offering a free 90-minute coaching session to help get them started and get them off on the right foot, which, again, I'm excited to do that. And I'm also, we're going to be introducing prizes for people who rake a certain amount of dollars each month as well. We have a couple things in the works now that I think are pretty exciting, and it looks like we're going to be teaming up with some pretty good names in the industry as well. Before I have that finalized, though, I don't really want to say anything, but there's going to be some good stuff to come. As always, if you want to see more free poker coaching content, the more you rate and comment on my videos, the more hits and stuff and the more advertising dollars we get. So that allows us to bring you more videos, whether you're watching them on YouTube or whether you're watching them directly on RakebackDollars. It takes 2 seconds to hit that like button or the rate button on the blog. And if you can go the extra step and even leave a comment, or if you have questions, I always answer them. Feel free to do that. But my next video is going to be on the mental game and warming up. I'm going to use techniques taken straight from Jared Tendler's The Mental Game of Poker and how I develop my warm up. And the future videos we're also going to be making I'm also going to be making a video on from my tournament win when my MTT win when I was playing on Minted, one of my wins there. I'm going to be taking a look at that. And we're going to go from there. So, as always, thanks, guys, and I'm looking forward to bringing you more content in the future. This is Sebastian signing off for RakebackDollars.com.